The central bank intervenes as the new Taiwan dollar rises at rapid pace. Taiwan's legislative recall efforts approach critical deadlines as second-stage petitions head for review. As joint U.S. Philippine military drills near Taiwan, Manila considers its response to a potential China-Taiwan conflict. Plus, campaigns ramp up for Taiwan's inclusion in the World Health Organization's annual meeting. A warm welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Leslie Liao. Taiwan's central bank has stepped in as the new Taiwan dollar continues to strengthen sharply against the U.S. dollar, rising at the fastest pace in decades. For the latest, let's go live to our reporter Chris Gorn, who's at the central bank. Chris, what has the central bank said?
Well, without giving too many specifics, the central bank sought to reassure the public that they are closely watching the situation and that they will take moderate steps to make sure that the market remains stable. And they also sought to clarify that they are not under any pressure from the U.S. to allow their currency to appreciate.
我们政府去跟美国谈这个经贸谈判的时候，经贸的那个磋商的时候呢，事实上呢，中央银行是没有参加的，没有参加，表示说没有汇率的这个议题，没有汇率的这个议题，美国的财政部呢也没有要求说新台币要升值。
Now, this all started because the value of Taiwan's currency against the U.S. dollar rose by more than 6% since last Friday. That's one of the largest rises in decades. And that can be pretty hard on an economy like Taiwan's, who relies heavily on exports. And the central bank is being watched very closely right now because, of course, Taiwan's exporters want the currency to remain weak so that its exports will be cheap. But there are Taiwanese officials in Washington right now in the midst of trade negotiations. And one of U.S. President Donald Trump's biggest accusations against some of its trade partners are that they manipulate their currencies to keep the value of exports low. And, you know, we can say for sure that Taiwan does not want to be considered a currency manipulator in the middle of its own negotiations. In fact, it has actually been on a monitoring list from the U.S. Treasury, a list of countries that are at risk of being considered a currency manipulator. So that is why the central bank's actions are being watched so closely right now, and they will continue to be watched closely until a deal is made.
All right, Chris, say the Taiwan dollar remains strong for longer. How might that affect Taiwan's economy?
Well, I was talking to some economists about this today, and they told me that, you know, basically speaking, the larger exporters, the semiconductor manufacturers, the electronics manufacturers, they are a little bit more prepared to absorb these kinds of costs. And it's actually the smaller, more traditional industries and companies that may suffer if the Taiwan dollar remains too strong. So unfortunately, Leslie, it may be the little guys who are getting hit hardest this time.
Thanks, Chris. And in the last few minutes, President Lai Ching-te has released a video saying Taiwan's central bank has not interfered in the exchange rate. We'll be following this story. Stay tuned for more updates. Legislative recall campaigns have been sweeping Taiwan, with both opposition and ruling party lawmakers in the crosshairs. May marks a pivotal time in the recall movement as key deadlines approach. Control of the legislature. That's what Taiwan's ruling Democratic Progressive Party and main opposition Kuomintang are struggling over. The KMT, in coalition with the smaller Taiwan People's Party, has a slight majority over the DPP. And that's causing problems for the ruling party, which is hitting roadblocks in implementing its policies. Most notably, the legislature slashed the government's proposed 2025 general budget by a record of near 7%. Civic groups have initiated recalls against KMT legislators, while the opposition has launched recalls of their own against DPP lawmakers. All in all, 50 lawmakers around the country face takedown campaigns. Before recalls can be taken to a public vote, campaigners must complete a two-stage petition process. In the first stage, they must collect signatures from 1% of a lawmaker's constituency. In the second stage, that bar is raised to 10%. The recall movement has been going on for months now, and second-stage petition deadlines have arrived. The first deadline was last Friday, beginning with a move to recall KMT lawmaker Huang Jianbing from Taidong County. Organizers say they've submitted more than enough petitions to initiate a vote.
希望在这里可以再带领全国其他地区的罢免呢，能够马上大家加油。
And election officials in Taidong say they're going to do their due diligence.
将依法验收，并将审查结果呈报中央选举委员会。
This all comes at a time when the KMT is questioning the system. Prosecutors have searched several KMT offices in recent weeks and detained party officials after reports surfaced that the names of dead people have shown up on recall petitions they are involved in. The KMT says the moves represent efforts by President Lai Ching-te to stifle the opposition.
蔡总统的态度已经很清楚啊，他希望每一个选区只要罢蓝的都要过关。所谓的鹰犬们就全力的照他的态度来对在野党不断的追杀。
But that hasn't stopped the recall movement. Over in Hualien County, a KMT stronghold, a recall campaign against KMT legislator and caucus whip Fu Kunxi is picking up steam. Organizers say they've received over 32,000 signatures in the second stage, well over the 20,000 threshold required to put his seat to a vote.
这不只是一次的罢免行动，这是一次对长期 政治垄断结构的反抗，也是花莲公民对不负责任的傅昆萁表达拒绝的行动。
Responding on social media, Fu says he respects the will of the people, but believes voters will choose to keep him in office. Monday is also the second stage petition deadline for KMT Deputy Speaker Johnny Jiang. Campaigners against him said they collected enough signatures and have submitted them. While this opening salvo seems worrisome for the KMT, deadlines for recalls against DPP lawmakers won't come until the end of May. Election officials also must validate every signature before an official recall vote can be called. Though the campaigns have been going on for months now, it's still relatively early to tell how the recalls will play out and who will be in control of the legislature a year from now. Patrick Sun and Leslie Liao for TaiwanPlus. The military says Taiwan received a first batch of 16 ATACMS missiles from the U.S. in January. Military sources have independently confirmed the delivery of the missiles. Local media reports say another 48 of the missiles were scheduled to be delivered in the first quarter of this year. ATACMS is a supersonic battlefield missile with a range of up to 300 kilometers. The missiles are part of a deal agreed in 2020, which also included HIMARS rocket launchers. The U.S.'s Pacific Army commander says China's aggressive behavior in the Indo-Pacific demands a fundamental shift in military strategy. General Ronald Clark told the Wall Street Journal that Beijing's rehearsals of Taiwan blockade were once unthinkable, but are now routine. He says China holds key advantages, and U.S. forces could arrive too late in a crisis. He says the U.S. is now boosting its presence in the region and deploying more long-range missile systems. It's also stepping up joint military drills with other regional allies, like the Balikatan exercises with the Philippines. And speaking of Balikatan, rising tensions between China and Taiwan are forcing neighboring Philippines to consider how it might respond to a conflict. As Rick Loud reports, massive joint U.S. Philippine military drills on the coast facing Taiwan reassure some, but trouble others.
51-year-old Philippine fisher Edison Palato has spent the last 2 days shorebound, drying last week's catch of anchovies. He's unable to head back out to sea because just off this coast, the Philippine military is conducting live fire drills with US forces. Despite missing out on much-needed income, Palatao supports the joint exercises.
Napakatahimik po itong apari. Kung ganun po ang mangyari, lalong-lalo na wala kaming kalaban-laban dyan. Ang gusto lang namin, nakasuporta po ang military dito sa Cagayan.
Along this remote coastline in the northern Philippines, hundreds of US and Philippine troops are training side by side, using planes, tanks, artillery and infantry to practice holding off a potential invasion. It's all part of joint drills called Balikatan, or shoulder to shoulder, held in spots across the country every year.
Enemy that we are fighting against here is an amphibious force coming from surface ships, deploying an amphibious force whose intent is to establish a foothold on the beaches with an intent to move inland once that mission has been accomplished. So a counter landing is intended to stop them.
And this location was chosen on purpose. Taiwan is just a few hundred kilometers north of here, across the Luzon Strait. Beyond these waters, China has been conducting more and more military sorties encircling Taiwan, putting pressure on the self-ruled island nation that Beijing says is part of its sovereign territory. The Chinese drills have got the Philippines planning what it would do if war broke out.
In any conflict scenario, it is essential that we establish sea control over Basi Channel and Luzon Strait. And one way of enhancing sea control is to have positive presence in Cagayan province.
To bolster its defences, the Philippines is giving defence partner, the US, more access to strategic areas like this. But not everyone here in rural Cagayan, where many families have Chinese heritage or business ties, welcomes American boots on the ground.
We should not go along with the U.S. what they want. We should decide on our own, not based on the U.S. policy or not on base their advice to us.
And suspicion here is growing over a new infrastructure development project. There are fears it could make the town a target.
They just told us that it's a port expansion, a tourism project for the betterment of Apari. I don't know if it collides with what is happening right now with the military exercises.
For many on this far-flung coast, life is not easy. They rely on fishing and farming to get by, livelihoods made harder by rising temperatures and more frequent typhoons. Now, as gunfire rings out near their homes, they know they must also face another growing threat. The fight for regional dominance moving closer to their doorstep. Fu Hua Hong, David Santos and Rick Lowett in Cagayan, the Philippines for TaiwanPlus.
U.S. President Donald Trump says he's willing to give TikTok more time to sell its U.S. operations, extending the deadline for a deal past June 19th. The ban on Chinese social media giant ByteDance platform has already been delayed twice. Trump says he has a sweet spot for TikTok after it helped him win over young voters in 2024. The law initially required ByteDance to stop operating in the U.S. by January 19th unless it sold off its U.S. assets to American buyers. The latest potential deal was scrapped by China, citing Trump's steep tariffs. Donald Trump has expanded his tariff program, adding a 100% levy on foreign movies. Trump says incentives offered by other countries were drawing U.S. filmmakers away from local studios. And as a result, the industry is, quote, dying a very fast death. It's the first time he has targeted a service sector rather than physical goods. Iran says it has successfully test-launched a solid-fuel ballistic missile with a range of 1,200 kilometers. Iranian state TV says the new missile is capable of striking distant targets without the aid of GPS. Iranian Defense Minister Aziz Nazirzadeh says if his country is attacked by the U.S. or Israel, they will strike back. The unveiling of the new missile comes after threats by the U.S. over Iran's nuclear weapons program. Washington and Tehran were supposed to hold talks on May 3rd to reduce tensions, but those have been delayed. Coming up after the break, farmers in Myanmar use fire to prepare land for growing, but is burning season to blame for the region's poor air quality? We bring you stories from Taiwan.
Every day of the week.
Our reporters travel the nation.
Exploring the issues that matter to you.
News from here in Taiwan and around the world.
What's up, Taiwan? On TaiwanPlus.
Welcome back after the short break. You're watching TaiwanPlus News. Civil groups around the world are campaigning for Taiwan to have a voice in global health discussions. It comes just weeks before the annual meeting of the WHO's organizing body, which Taiwan hasn't been invited to. Reese Ayers reports.
Health has no borders. That's the message from Taiwan as it ups its campaign for entry into international health organizations. From op-eds in newspapers in the UK and Sweden to civil group gatherings in the Philippines and Australia, ahead of this year's World Health Assembly later this month, Taiwan wants the world to know that its exclusion is harmful to global health. Taiwan has historically been excluded from the WHO, the decision-making body of the World Health Organization, due to pressure from China, which claims Taiwan as its own. Taiwan was granted observer status under the name Chinese Taipei from 2009 to 2016, when the more China-friendly Kuomintang held the presidency, but hasn't been invited since. Despite not receiving an invitation to join again this year, Taiwan has announced plans to send an action team anyway. Though they won't be able to attend any official meetings, they will continue to garner support from the sidelines.
除了传统的这些诉求以外，也用比较活泼的方式，去这个呈现台湾的民意，特别台湾人的心声。所以我们希望透过这一次的WHA 的大会，有更多的人能够来为台湾发声，也能够争取在大会中让我们的主张能够呈现出来。
With its 30-year-old national health system often ranked among the best in the world, and as a leader in AI technology, Taiwan says it has a lot to contribute to the future of global healthcare. Health Minister Cho Tae-yuen is urging the United Nations to stick to its vision of leaving no one behind, arguing that health is a fundamental human right and should not be politicized. But as with anything related to Taiwan's place in the international community, the subject is inevitably political. And with civic groups planning to mobilize people from over 50 countries to help Taiwan's case, including an event outside the UN office in Geneva the day before the assembly begins, Taiwan's push for better health for all is also a chance to campaign for its position on the global stage. Devon Tai and Reese Ayers for TaiwanPlus.
Over 5,000 pharmacists and pharmacy students are protesting a new government directive that allows some pharmacy graduates to sell traditional Chinese medicine without passing the national pharmacist exam.
往后诊所的医生第二代也休息35个结婚就可以当医生。我想这种逻辑已经把专业践踏。
The protesters called the directive illegal and a threat to public safety. The health ministry argues the change addresses worker shortages and supports the traditional Chinese medicine industry. Pharmacists are threatening to protest outside the ministry every week until they get a satisfactory response. Police are struggling to hold back a wave of scams as fraudsters refine techniques and shift tactics. Despite some success helping victims, scammers made off with almost $257 million in April alone. John Van Triest has more.
This woman in her 70s, face not shown for privacy, has just raised alarm bells at her local bank. She's trying to withdraw around $30,000 from what she says are stem cell injections. Someone's convinced her not only to take this money out, but to download an investment app where she can wire money to the supposed medical treatment company. The police are soon involved and find the woman is yet another senior citizen targeted by scammers.
对话内容除了老妇人所关心的医疗疗程外，还下载了明显为假交易的平台。内容声称投资金额越多，除可以短期制造大量获利外，会员等级也可以提升成 VIP 级别等话术。
Taiwan has seen a spike in scams in recent years. And while their success rate can vary wildly from one month to the next, scammers aren't slowing down this year. After a dip in January and February, their illicit earnings skyrocketed in March and April. Last month alone, victims lost around $257 million US. Tackling scams is hard work, as the scammers show innovation. Lately, smaller-scale online shopping scams are among the most common. And scammers know how to choose their targets. Many are senior citizens who may not see or believe red flags. It took family intervention to save one 65-year-old Taidong County man from losing $3,000 US to scammers peddling a fake miracle cure for men online.
所幸其妹婿察觉有异，及时陪同王男至本所报案，远警积极介入下成功拦阻。
Despite occasional successes like this, scammers show few signs of backing down. In a typical month, police have around 10,000 new cases to deal with. And the evolution of new tricks means Taiwan's scam problem remains a tough one to crack. Klein Wang and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
Newspaper The Liberty Times says China is offering money for Taiwanese people to go on propaganda tours under the guise of religious exchanges. China claims Taiwan, and the report says Beijing is using the fact many gods worshipped in Taiwan have Chinese origins to promote this claim among Taiwanese worshippers. The report says China offers around $30 US per head to those who convince Taiwanese people to take part in these trips. In response, the Interior and Justice Ministries say they're ready to handle any illegal activity that may be tied to these group tours. 10 people have been killed after strong winds capsized 4 tour boats in a river in southwestern China. More than 80 people fell into the water when a sudden storm overturned the boats in Guizhou province. Chinese President Xi Jinping has called for strengthened safety measures at the country's tourist attractions. Chinese state broadcaster CCTV says the boats were not overloaded. Poor air quality across Asia has been a growing concern for decades. Though there are many causes, in Myanmar and other parts of Southeast Asia, smoky skies are often a result of seasonal slash-and-burn farming. As Jonathan Kaplan reports, it's an issue that may not go away anytime soon.
Deep in the hills of Myanmar's Shan State, far from the battlegrounds of the country's ongoing civil war, farmers scorch the earth, not to destroy, but to grow their crops. Shifting cultivation, also known as slash-and-burn agriculture, is an entrenched practice here, passed down through generations.
We've been depending on farming for our livelihood since the time of our ancestors. This is the only work we have because there are no other jobs and opportunities in our region. That's why we continue with shifting cultivation each year. It's the only way we survive through this traditional cultivation.
The practice works like this. Farmers cut down the trees and vegetation on the land they wish to cultivate. After the winter season dries out the fallen plant matter, they put the torch to it. The burn creates a richly fertile area for planting crops. Shifting cultivation has come under heavy scrutiny from governments and environmental groups in recent years, but farmers say they do it responsibly.
While logging and burning cause deforestation and harm the environment, we have our own rules and regulations to prevent this deforestation. We only cut trees and burn the same fields once every 10 years. During that time, we let the trees grow back on the mountains, and after 10 years, we repeat the process.
Agricultural burning is widespread in Southeast Asia. Visitors to tourism hotspot Chiang Mai across the border in Thailand, about 200 kilometers away from Shan State, learn to avoid the late winter burning season when the air is thick with smoke. Doctors like Rungsrik Ganjanavanit say it's a public health concern in Thailand's second largest city.
The effects on the population is very high. Unlike if you have, say, if you smoke, then okay, your risk of having heart attack might goes up 2-3 times, but not everyone smoke. But here, although the risk itself is not as high as smoking, you have to multiply by the exposure rate, which is 100% because everyone breathes, yes.
Back in Myanmar, local leaders say there's no way around slash and burn.
As the Kayan people, we have relied on shifting cultivation and see no alternative ways for the future due to a lack of technology and essential abilities to switch to other farming methods.
The villagers here subsist on the crops they grow on the hillsides, like rice, corn, and chili peppers. They hold ceremonies and celebrations for the burn. And some say the environmental effects of sending whole hillsides up in smoke isn't all that bad.
When we burn the fields in the mountains, it's only for about an hour, not the whole day or week. The smoke dissipates within that hour, and we believe this short period of burning does not significantly contribute to pollution.
The haze may drift elsewhere, but locals say the practice isn't going away anytime soon. Amid the instability of civil war in a nation where half the population lives in poverty, the farmers here just don't have the resources to live any other way. And so, environmental cautions, like smoke from the fields, are thrown to the wind. Andy Xue and Jonathan Kaplan for TaiwanPlus.
Thank you for watching TaiwanPlus News. I'm Leslie Liao. Take care and see you next time.